In this video, I'm going to paint this 97 GMC Dually at home. I'm not a painter, but I would like to share my experience on the project. I will be doing a voiceover on this video, and I will only try to focus on the key important elements of this project. I started off with the tailgate to try to save this tailgate. It had a very bad bow on the top rail. I used the engine hoist to bend the metal back to its original location, and luckily it was a success. I bought this Harbor Freight dent puller decades ago. Luckily, I never got rid of it. It came in handy on this project because of it had so many dents on this truck. I have a homemade leverage pulley that I used on the inside of the tailgate. That metal seemed to be a little tougher to bring that metal back to its original location. This is a good technique with this Harbor Freight welding kit. The one thing you need to keep in mind is have a grinder handy to clean up the metal after you're done pulling the dent. This tailgate had a lot of screw holes along the perimeter of the inside tailgate, and I just simply welded those shut and grinded them down smooth to get it ready for body filler. In the beginning stages of your project, keep all your panels clean, grease-free. I use a Dawn soap and a green Scotch-Brite. The area that I'm going to be applying body filler, I had a Harbor Freight 36 grit flat disc pad, and then I took off all the paint basically down to the metal in those areas where my body filler was going to be applied. When I used small quantities of body filler, because when you put the hardener, which is a ratio of about 2% of the body filler, and you thoroughly mix it, and your body filler starts drying really fast, and a lot of it has to do depending on the weather, and if you're working in the sun, I'm sure it'll dry extremely fast. But regardless, you don't have much time to work with this body filler, and you want to press down firmly in the initial application. You don't want to have any air pockets in your body filler. Because I'm getting familiar with this body filler and the fast drying time, I go in small sections, do small areas. I can always add more body filler. If you add too much body filler, you can always sand it down. So you just have to work with it and experience with it. When it's ready for sanding, which is in this case was 15 minutes, I always sand with the block. I'm using 40 grit, Duragold self-adhesive paper from Amazon, and my Dura blocks are also from Amazon. Now that I'm working on my outside panels, the larger dents, I use the Harbor Freight stud welding kit with a slide hammer, and that removed the dents, cleaned it up, and then those were ready for body filler. Smaller dings, which there was several. I used the 36 grit flap disc pad, cleaned that area, and applied a thin layer of body filler. It didn't require the dent puller because the dent was so minor, but it did needed to be filled, leveled off to the surface of the body. The hood initially looked in decent condition. After washing it down with some Dawn soap and a Scotch-Brite, green Scotch-Brite, several dings. I marked them as I could find them. I'm sure I'm going to find more. Let's see if I can get a better angle. All of the Sharpie marks are dents and dings that damaged the metal. Somehow here there's a high spot, several waves here, maybe a jammed hood hinge. You have a high spot here and then it dips to a low spot. I don't know if that's factory because here I feel a little dip here also. So a lot of this some of it could be factory, but these issues can be addressed. It's just going to take a little bit of time. So I'm not going to strip the hood down. It's a good solid rust-free hood. So it has a good, this paint has a good foundation. So what I'm going to do is just grind down the areas that need body filler. The low spots that are excessive, I'll use the dent puller, and then 2K primer after the Bondo's leveled off, and then block it from there. All right, found some more little dings. Decided to try to take care of them now. This was a debatable little dip, but also here there was a couple of little ripples. Maybe they threw some boxes or somebody sat on the hood at one time. But however, I was going to block it, high build primer. I was risking blocking it and hitting metal or the ripple not going away. I decided to just bring it down to the metal, add a thin layer of body filler, block it, and then primer it, just to ensure that that wave is going to be gone. We're going to sand using these blocks, 40 grit sandpaper. I can use a disc sanding pad. I'd rather just do it by hand. My goal is to bring this body filler down level with the surface of this paint. 40 grit, then I'll go 80 grit, then I'll keep on going to finer grits until I'm probably at a 320, and then I'll primer the entire hood with a high build 2K primer and guy coat and block sand again. .13mm bolts were holding this fender together. Get two right there by the door jamb, one at the very bottom, and you have a row all the way around your inner fender well, and then you have three in the front area, one by the lower bumper, and pointing those all out right there. One right there on the top, radiator core support. The other one you have on your inner wall, you have several bolts that are brackets for your ECM and just different accessories on that driver's side fender. Yeah, at this point, I just decided to gut the doors out. I don't have to do any masking. I knew there was going to be a lot of sanding, and anyhow, that was just a decision I made. And you don't have to go to the extreme of taking the whole doors off, fenders off. Everything can be painted on the vehicle. You know, just it depends on where you're going to paint, where you're going to work at. Do you have the room, etc. The truck is going to go back original white. I'm going to repaint the mirrors black, so they have to come off. working on each panel, is basically a repetitive process. I'm just keeping this footage on lapse time, just to show, how much work is involved, and to see, you know, hopefully this helps somebody make a decision. Is it a project that they want to take on? At what level do you want your paint job to be? Some people just use the turbo can, rattle can, and call it good. And I'm sure those come out nice, and they, put a lot of effort into their project. Here we're gonna try to make the truck go back to factory, and I just feel that these are the steps necessary, to try to get somewhat close to a factory-looking paint job. Always remember to crosshatch when you're sanding. Larger panels, don't forget. Use your longest block you have available. I'm still working on the 40 grit on this project. Crosshatch. As you can see, I'm down touching metal here, so I stopped. Metal, metal, low spots, low spot, low spot. Touching metal, low spot, and you can see the feathering. This is all going to be removed when I hit my 80 grit. I've got a low spot here, and I'm touching metal here. So we'll see if this long block keeps the panels flat. It should. So far everything is just down to a 40 grit sandpaper. So now I'm going to transfer over after I finish that last door, and I'm going to go to an 80 grit and repeat the process to remove the 40 grit scratches. And then I'll transfer down to a 120, 180, 220, 320, and then a primer. So on these larger panels here, I can still use the long block, which is this one, and I can bring all this body filler down. I went a little bit heavy on the body filler, so it's going to be a lot of work. This set overnight, it's hardening up, and it's going to be a lot of work to sand it down, but just keep on going. Now on that door, I was pointing out the low spots. Just simply make some more body filler, and then just apply it to those low spots, and then keep on sanding. I'll be transitioning over from a 40 grit to an 80 grit. Check your blocks where your sandpaper sticks onto. If there's any gummy areas, use goof off or Simply just clean those off. Have a nice clean block, because you don't want to have any bumps on your surface of your block where you're sanding that could affect your appearance of your work. Here I found a little ding that I missed, and I'm just sanding it out. I started off with the heavier grit, then I worked my way to finer grits till I'm at a 320. And I'm also sanding the all my panels down. I'm already at the 320 stage. Then I go with the 400, and then it'll be ready for primer. Any oddball, hard to get areas that the sandpaper is struggling to reach, just simply go with the green Scotch Brite. That has the texture to match about a 320 to 400 grit sandpaper. Here I found the high spot, and I just simply tapped it down in bad body filler and just the normal routine process of sanding down the Bondo, the body filler. Before primer, I used Prep-All wax and grease remover, and I wiped down the whole panel that the primer was going to be hidden, and then I wiped it down with a clean rag, and then I used a tack cloth, and then I mixed my primer. It was the TranStar DTM primer, and it's a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 parts primer, 1 part primer activator. And my gun was a Harbor Freight gun, about a $75, $80 gun, and that was at a 28 PSI, and it went well. All right, I used about a half gallon of primer on the 2 fenders, 2 doors, hood, and tailgate. And it was about 2 coats. I had a little bit left over, so I think the hood ended up going 3 coats, but nice heavy coats. And it's 5 hours of drying time. Then I put the guide coat on this one section of the door, and I started sanding. It seemed like I was getting a little residue or debris on the sandpaper. I kept on having to clean it more than what I'd like to, so I decided to wait the next day to allow it to dry. All right, this panel, I'm still using the 320. I've only used the long block. I've only put the guide coat on this section. Crosshatch sanding. All the guide coat came off nice and even, although here there's a guide coat showing here, over here by the door handle. So in those areas, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this dolphin glaze. So I'm going to use this dolphin glaze, lightly hit here, 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 maybe here, here, and this area here. And that's it, very minimal. And then it says to sand with 180 to 240. I'm going to sand with 240 after this thoroughly dries. And then primer it again, and then block it again with the guide coat. And I'm going to do that to all these panels here. Same process. It's going to take me probably a few days, just depending on how many hours I spend a day. But that concludes part 1. Subscribe, like, and share. Thanks.